Straight ahead on, folks, we visit the first Louisiana African American Economic Fest in Lafayette, Louisiana. You'll meet some of the people there, and we'll explore new economic developments in the Black community. Call it the New Black Agenda on today's edition of Folks. Hello everyone, and welcome to Folks. I'm Sonya Masingale. Today we begin a series of programs exploring what we call the New Black Agenda. The thrust in economic development for Black Americans is not new, but there is a new enthusiasm for Black people to help themselves to make it in mainstream America. Research shows that people are more concerned with their economic future. There's a growing level of dissatisfaction with the economic status of Black Americans. More calls for the pooling of resources and the use of those resources as a bargaining tool, and less dependence on government programs. In spending power, Black Americans make up the 8th largest nation in the world. Blacks in America spent $200 billion last year on goods and services. Research shows that by the year 2000, Blacks will probably spend twice that amount. In America, money talks, and people all over the nation are looking for ways to turn buying power into bargaining power. The evidence shows up in the variety of organizations springing up to address economic development. Black Chambers of Commerce, Tony Brown's Buy Freedom campaign, and here in Baton Rouge, there's the Economic Freedom Association. Now, later on today, we'll talk to the man who coined the phrase economic enfranchisement as the new Black agenda. But first, we attended Ujamaa in Lafayette, the first Louisiana African American Economic Fest.
Let's read it together, please.
This gathering is called Ujamaa. Based on the concept of self-help, Ujamaa was called the first Louisiana African American Economic Fest. Ujamaa was organized by Tecuna Dixon, a Lafayette schoolteacher and entrepreneur.
Well, Ujamaa means the cooperative economics. It's one of the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba, which is one of the 7 Black principles. Ujamaa came about simply first out of basic need. I've been an entrepreneur now for several years. There has been a lot of community effort on my part in terms of trying to make business work. I soon came to the realization that, especially since the economic crunch has hit this area pretty hard, that there was no market for us as an African people to perpetuate the kinds of things that we need to actually be successful in a business. Ujamaa represents cooperative economics. It is a community effort. I think it's going to address the interests of the masses of people. But as an entrepreneur, as a business person, I need to create a market in order to survive. So my concerns are linked to the masses' concerns, whether we recognize that fact or not.
The idea was to bring people together from around the state who want to involve themselves in the building of economic development, thereby lifting the economic power of the collective Black community.
We should pool our own resources, economic resources, educational resources, human resources, and do for ourselves what other civilized nations automatically do for themselves.
While the call for economic development of the Black community from within is not new, the concept is getting more direction, attention, and new energy in America. Many believe that re-education and economic development is or should be the new Black agenda.
I think that the new Black agenda in America is a love of self, and not in a narcissistic manner, but in a manner of truly recognizing the greatness and the contributions that Black people have made in the world. By re-educating ourselves and learning about ancient Africa, not Egypt in the context of how Western civilization has tried to portray Egypt as some mulatto or some Arab or European kind of Africanized people, but understanding that civilization began with Africans. And once we understand our beginnings and our fall, then we can have a re-love of self, and also in that love we express our love to other black people that we see.
No, I don't think there's a new black agenda. What I feel is that the way things are handled is different. Used to be there was right out, you could say prejudice or whatever you want to call it, but now it's more of an undercurrent type thing. And what I've noticed is, especially in the business area, in professional areas, it's very subtle the way they try to keep people that they don't want, quote, in certain positions out. And it's very subtle, and if you're not perceptive enough to see it, then it'll just pass you by and you just think, oh, well, it wasn't my turn this time.
African Americans want the same thing that other people in America want: decent homes, decent jobs, suitable living environment, a place to work. When people talk about a new agenda, what it is that you have a segment of black America that's complaining about the status quo, the conditions that exist, the poor conditions in schools, poor conditions in housing, the rampant drug abuse, the unemployment problem among African Americans. So when we talk about a new agenda, there is no new agenda. The problem that exists is that there are a few African Americans who have taken on the responsibility themselves to attempt to wake up the black community and the white community, to show them what's happening and try to work together to offer solutions.
There needs to be a new black agenda, although I think we're a little slow in starting it. But we really need it, and I think eventually we will start supporting each other and buying from each other and treating each other as a people.
We know what the economics are in our community. You can walk out your door and see what the economics are in our community. We know by looking at what the economics in our community is about, what it's going to take to change that. I know right now, in my community, probably in every black community in America, I need a grocery store in my community. That's owned and operated by somebody that looks just like me. Okay, and that's going to translate, if it's supported by everybody in this room, and every 100 or 200 people everybody in this room knows, then I might be able by the end of 2 years to employ everybody in this room.
Most agree that the black community is searching for ways to harness and use their economic power for more control over their own destinies. But there is a new widespread distrust of government programs and the role that government should or will play in helping black Americans economically.
The government should take a very positive role. But history teaches us, and if you're a good student of history, you find that it goes in cycles. Whenever things heat up in the black community, government seems to step in and try and cool things down with some little economic program or a little civil rights program. Though I would think that the government owes black people in America a great deal, because it wasn't just the ingenuity of Europeans coming over from the European continent to colonize America. It was the importation of over 100 million black people from Africa over a period in exceeding 300 years that black people received absolutely nothing for their work. We worked from can't see in the morning to can't see at night and actually received not one dime. So though I would hope that the government would be positive, my historical background tells me that the government is not going to do anything.
I think that they should be there to make sure that blacks have the same opportunities as whites. And if they can't do that, if they can't represent all the people and do everything for all the people, then I think government is just a waste of time.
I don't think government will play any role in it. I think it's something we have to do for ourselves.
Joining me in the studio today is the man who coined the phrase economic enfranchisement to describe the new black agenda in America. Bethel Nathan is Senior Vice President of the Nathan Group, a 10-year-old public relations and political consulting firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mr. Nathan, welcome to Folks.
Thank you.
You were cited in Jet magazine last month for the research, study, analysis, and recommendations that you did for the White House. Now, what did your research reveal that relates to economic enfranchisement?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the study, first of all, and why we were asked. There was a feeling on the part of the Republican National Committee to want to determine the attitudes and the perceptions of black Americans on many subjects and many thoughts. The interesting thing that we went in to find, however, was first of all about affirmative action, that black Americans felt that affirmative action was not the way. It was not something that was in the best interest of black Americans in today's time. Recently, to confirm the information, the Atlanta Journal-Southern Constitution released a poll that came along and confirmed our analysis as well. The interesting thing about that, our project director, when that information came out, he said, you know, I don't believe I'm sitting before a black audience saying this. I believe I'm before a white audience. It's very strange. In addition to that, it found out that blacks believed that government was not the way as well, that it did not need to have government, that they did not need to have a role within the lives of black Americans, and that it was very simple dollars and cents that blacks were looking for.
Dollars and cents. Okay, now I've talked about affirmative action with a number of people in the past, and that kind of thing seems to be a sacred cow in the black community. I mean, whereas they don't believe it's helped as many people as it could, or that the programs have been conducted in a way that they should have been conducted, that they don't, it's not that they don't see it as the way. I wonder what your research reveals further about those type of government programs.
Well, it believes that affirmative action has only benefited a very small few of black Americans. For instance, the focus group, one participant in Cleveland, Ohio, cited this. They said, you know, what do we want? 10% of the jobs and give up 90% of the jobs? What happens to those other 90% of the people? That it only benefited a very, very few, that the same people continuously got the same things through the affirmative action program. So by and large, on a whole basis, black Americans felt that affirmative action, minority set-asides were not any longer in the best interest of blacks in America, did not help the black society to prosper.
Now, I have announced at the head of the program that today is the beginning of a month's worth of programming on the same subject, on the new black agenda. We will be tackling affirmative action, minority set-asides, other government-type programs, and see where the people of Louisiana really are, where they'd like to go. But getting back to economic enfranchisement, that's something that you've been saying for a couple of years now, and I'd like to know more about it. Why the term economic enfranchisement? What does that mean?
Well, it's a new struggle. It's the new self-black pride. It's not that black Americans any longer cannot buy a home. I mean, we can buy a home. What we want to do is become home developers. We want to develop plots of land and develop homes. It's not that we cannot buy a Mercedes-Benz. We want to own a dealership. It's not that we cannot go in a hotel and get a room. We want to own the hotels. Back in 1984, we say that what brought all this about was November 7, 1984. That's when black Americans woke up and realized that America had changed. Now, what's so significant about November 7, 1984? That's the day after Ronald Reagan was reelected to office. And the night before, if you looked on the map, when they had all the returns coming in, you see two places that voted for Walter Mondale. One was Washington, D.C., and the other was Minnesota. The rest of the country had shifted and gone completely the opposite way. And black Americans, in our opinion, at that point in time, recognized that there was a change, that it was definitely taking place. And then subsequent in our work since then, as we moved out into the States, we've heard blacks make very interesting comments. Though Reagan was unpopular with black Americans, very unpopular, you hear things on the street like, he did do good for blacks. He forced us to be able to go to work we recognized that government programs were not going to be any longer to our benefit. We were not going to get government programs. Therefore, we had to do something else. And that something else became the economic enfranchisement, the ability to be able to become self-supporting and to go into business, to no longer depend upon government.
Well, certainly black-owned businesses are not new in America, but there does seem to be a new energy or a new thrust towards entrepreneurship. Is that what we mean by enfranchisement?
Well, we mean that by that yes, that we could go to work for IBM. We now want to own our own IBMs. And it's the new feeling. It's the ability to be able to control your destiny. It's the ability to be able to have some basic power and feeling and be a part of America's mainstream. And that's what blacks are looking for. Everybody wants to be a part of the mainstream now.
And when you say mainstream, I realize a large part of your work is research into what people want. So what have you found? What do black people want?
They want the same thing that white people want. They want the American dream, the American way. They want a home. They want to be comfortable. They want to pay their taxes. They want the same things that white Americans want. But the primary thing they want is respect and recognition. That is the absolute 100% key.
And you're going to have to elaborate on that.
Well, when we talk, let me back up a minute on economic enfranchisement. I would urge everybody to read John Johnson's Succeeding Against the Odds. I think that is the true key of where we're talking about economic enfranchisement. But he cites an example in the book of where he was writing a letter when he was first starting Ebony magazine. And he wrote a letter. He was writing it to some 20,000 black individuals. And he recognized that the one thing that blacks wanted in that was what Aretha Franklin says, and that's respect. And that's what black Americans look for, is respect and recognition.
Similar to what some of the people that we talked to at the Ujamaa conference said, they're re-educating themselves, learning something about their history in order to boost their self-esteem, to give them the inspiration, if you will.
Well, we in our recommendations, in our report to the White House, that's what we found, and it was determined that the biggest problem among blacks in America is the suffering of low self-esteem. Now, I've gone back out and asked people what does that mean to them, and I had a friend of mine come up with a very interesting one word, and he said low self-esteem means discouraged. And I had to think about that for a minute, and I said, well, you have a very good point there. That's exactly what it means. But that's what black Americans suffer from. That's what the report concluded, is a feeling of low self-esteem. That's what now brings about this whole economic enfranchisement, this whole feel and movement to want to own something, to want to command something, we recognize and understand that government no longer will be able to do what it has once done. It's just like your checking account. You don't put any money in there, you can't keep drawing it out. And that's exactly what's happening with the government system. Not enough money is going into it. So government and blacks understand that is not the way to go anymore, that we have to build our own.
Most middle-class people tell their children that they must have an education and then they must have a job. I think your research tells us something very interesting about middle-class black America, and I'd like for you to share that with me.
Well, Tony Brown says it very well. Tony Brown says that, every other race teaches their kids to go into business, and first thing mom and daddy says to us is that you got to get a job. Well, that comes out from the old way. That comes out from being able to self-support yourself. Remember, keep that in our society, we have not had those economic organizations. We've had only civil rights and social. We know our Greek letter organizations to be social, and we know our civil rights, the NAACP, the Urban League, all the others to be civil rights. We have not had that economic organization that says, okay, it's money, this is where you go get money, and that's what America's about, is money. And that's what America is about, money. And we're beginning to understand that.
And so we're going for the dollar.
We're going to make money.
Okay.
And we recognize that we can't make money working with somebody else, that money is made by going out and participating in a free enterprise system.
Okay, now there are some government programs that have been set up to enable black people to participate in the free enterprise system, such as affirmative action and minority set-asides. But what your research has been telling us is that black people are saying those things don't work.
They don't work.
But does that mean they don't want them?
Well, it means that they don't work, in that so if you say, if it doesn't work, then no, I don't want them. We want some other type of situation, something else. I mean, you can't force the system to give you something. I mean, that you just can't do that. It's just, I mean, just absolutely cannot be done. You have to go inside and develop your own programs, develop your own base of support. I mean, blacks have to develop own banks to loan themselves each other money. I mean, you can't go walk into a bank and say it discriminates because it won't loan me any money. Therefore, what I ought to do is get mad with this bank because they really don't care. I mean, they don't care if you get mad and go out and say they discriminate. What has to happen is that we have to create our own, and that's what people are recognizing and understanding, that we have to create our own. That's why you now have black individuals who own an NBA franchise, because they understand the meaning of ownership.
Are franchises going to be part of the economic development?
Yes, it
of
is.
blacks
It really is, and that's a big movement now to get blacks into the franchise business.
Why?
Because again, what happens is it's a partnership. You invest a little being $200,000 in some of the lowest ones to get into. But what you have is working within a system of a proven method to help you succeed in business and to help you become successful. You know, everybody wants a McDonald's franchise if you could get one, or a Wendy's franchise, or a Burger King franchise.
Okay, now there are some people that are very disturbed that there are so many black organizations springing up, black chambers of commerce, economic associations. They are afraid that these type organizations mean separatism. Is that what it means?
Now, first of all, what some people would be disturbed at these? What, you have to tell me a little bit about who.
Well, mainstream America tends to be white people tend to be disturbed. When we were out shooting some of the video that you saw before, I heard one of my camera operators to say, but you know, it frightens me because it sounds like separatism.
Well, whenever blacks get together, whites get frightened. So I mean, that's not going. I mean, I don't know how to answer that any more than that.
It's okay.
You know, if it's more than two of us gathered together, whites gonna get frightened until they understand exactly what the agenda is. Now, once white America understands that the agenda is economic freedom, then they're right there to help. That comes back to the question, do you need some kind of government law to make Exxon do business with you? Well, Exxon only cares about, not using them just only as an example, Exxon cares about a bottom line, that's profit. If you can provide a service and provide that service well, then that's all they care. I mean, they have one color, green.
But is that the same with all organizations?
Sure
it hasn't been up till now.
Well, sure, no, it's always the same. I mean, that's not true. It is the same with all organizations. What happens is, it's like you. If somebody comes to you and says, you must do this, then you have a natural tendency not to want to do that. I mean, if you're operating a business, you believe that the law should not be able to say to me what I ought to do. I ought to be able to spend my dollars and cents with those individuals that I want to spend my dollars and cents with. That's been the big problem with white-owned establishments, that they fight the affirmative action, the set-aside program, because they say that shouldn't be intervened. Same thing that applies. I mean, I operate a business. I wouldn't want the government coming to me telling me who I should hire. I mean, I don't think they have a right to tell me who I should hire. They can't say I should hire somebody white if I don't want to hire somebody white. Or I should do business with a white supplier if I don't want to do business with a white supplier, because because they're white.
Okay. Well,
I would fight that law as hard as I could fight it.
Okay, now that brings us to the subject for next week. Will be minority set-asides. What we're going to do is examine the impact that particular policy has had on the life of some black Louisianians and state the case pro and con. I'd like your opinion of minority set-asides.
We've been in business 10 years. We have never gone after one set-aside contract in the whole time that we have been in business, not even tried. We have a mountain have had a mountain of opportunities to do it, but just never have done it. And because we don't believe in that. We believe that we are as competent, qualified as anybody else that does what we do. I mean, and if we go to work, we get the job done. I believe it's a crutch. I believe it's a detriment to black Americans because there's only so much set aside. I mean, how much can you set aside? What can you get out of it? It takes away from the free enterprise system, and it becomes un-American. Because in America, we are based upon a free enterprise system.
Well, what about those companies that feel that they could not compete for the larger portion of those dollars?
Then they ought not be in business. It's just that simple. I mean, this is life is very tough. And if you don't believe you can compete, then you should not operate.
Well, I think it's interesting that Virginia is the state where the set-asides were first done in, and yet all indicators are that they're going to elect a black governor of the state of Virginia.
Now, some people would say, well, that's maybe because now whites will elect a black governor because they have a guilt complex. That's not true. I read that in an article this morning just before coming over here. That's absolutely not true. People just don't want to be forced. Nobody wants to be forced into doing something that they don't want to do. That's what brought about the civil rights movement. We couldn't eat at a lunch counter, so we said that was absolutely wrong. So we marched, we went in, we changed, things were changed. But no one wants to be forced into doing anything.
But some will see the chipping away at programs that were initially set up to help as an indicator that the country is attempting to go back to that time when we cannot sit at lunch counters.
Well, some people are going to find fault in anything that's done. I mean, that's just, the nature of people, to find a reason why. The key to it is that, again, I have to reiterate, in America, we operate on the free enterprise system. You have a talent, I have a talent. We go in, we are able then to receive a payment for our abilities and our talents. When someone is sitting there making a judgment, they say, if you're good, then I will pay you. Now, if they come along and they say, now, I got to pay Bethel Nathan because I got no choice. Doesn't matter whether he's black, so I got to pay him. Then the person making that decision does not want to be put into that posture. And I have to reiterate again, if you came to provide a service for me and were not talented, I don't want the government telling me I got to give it to you just because you who you are, and you are a minority. And then I think what it is, it's a psychological effect, especially in blacks' mind. Because in your bidding, you're saying it's a negative reinforcement. I am getting something because I am inferior. When you go down, and again, if you take a look at the forms in the state of Louisiana that you have to fill out to prove that you are a minority with a company, I mean, it's the forms are degrading.
Well, we're certainly going to be looking into this.
Absolutely. That's the question. You got to produce a birth certificate and all of this other stuff. They don't ask white people to produce a birth certificate.
We are going to be looking into that, and I do appreciate your coming today and lending the benefit of your experience. Economic enfranchisement. Now, how long ago did you coin that phrase?
November 7th, 1984.
1984, and here we are 5 years into it and still going strong. We're really seeing it come to pass now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're out of time for today. Now be sure to join us next week for another edition of Folks. Bye-bye.